Rant alert. Saints lose 6 straight game. Time for Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis to go. This is Matt Moscona. This is After Further Review, and I am the face of the franchise, the best to ever do it. And we are going to react to the rant. So, Saints blow another one. Another Nicky Benz performance from the Saints, and here we are. 6 straight losses, 2-6. Abysmal performance against the Chargers, abysmal performance against the Broncos, abysmal performance against the Buccaneers, abysmal performance against the Chiefs. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. So, let's go ahead and listen to Matt, hear what he has to say, and react like only we can do.
Saints lose to the Chargers 26-8. For the first time since 2005,
6 straight.
The New Orleans Saints have lost 6 straight football games.
Yeah.
It is a very unfamiliar situation for the Saints indeed. If you missed it after the game, Cam Jordan tweeted effectively that, something he's going through for the first time in his entire career, that this is something unfamiliar, something they are just not used to in New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, very few teams are used to this. Like, very few teams are used to, even like really bad teams usually pick up a win there, you know, like things kind of they're on a razor's edge, but this is just like, don't show up for 6 straight weeks and just get blown out for a month, and that's it. Like, we were not only did we lose 6 in a row, but they're not competitive. They're not fun to watch. It's not a good product. Like, there's nothing redeeming about certainly the last 4 games. Nothing redeeming at all.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about the game, honestly. There's not much to talk about.
Yeah. You know, it's funny he says that because usually on road games I go live at halftime. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, I can't go live. Like, what am I going to talk about? What could I possibly talk about with this game? And then at the end of the game, I'm sitting there, I'm like, Jesus, I guess we'll recap it. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of felt like that. Like, you're watching this and you're like, where do I begin? But also, why even waste my breath? Like, what am I going to say? You know, like, everything is sunk. Everything is busted, broken, listless, gutless, whatever. You know, am I supposed to sit there and say, man, Ugo Amadi can't get mossed by Ladd McConkey? It's like, yeah. Like, yes, for sure, he cannot. Levante Taylor can't get mossed by Ladd McConkey. No, he probably shouldn't do that. Kendra Miller needs to be on the field. Yeah, he does need to be on the field. Alvin Kamara can't drop passes. No, he probably shouldn't. Chris Olave can't. Like, you know, it's so bad that it's like obviously bad. There's not even anything I can give to the situation besides, wow, that was terrible.
The offense managed 2 field goals. Kubiak took no shots down the field.
None.
Your defense allowed 26 points to an offense that was averaging 18. You allowed them a dozen more points than they were averaging. You got your JV defense out there getting mossed by Ladd McConkey. You have a coward coach that punted on 4th and 1 from the Chargers 47 in the first quarter. They had better coaches. They had better players. They had better uniforms. They got a better stadium. They got better weather. They're better in every way.
I don't know about I mean, yeah, I guess the stadium is nice. Obviously, the weather's nice. Uniforms controversial yet brave. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess so.
They're better in every way, and you lost. You lost your 6 straight. You stink. You're miserable. If this ain't rock bottom, I don't know what is. Like, I don't know. I know it's rock bottom.
Yeah, losing to Carolina.
Lose this week at Carolina.
Yeah.
By the way, as bad as you are, you're a 5.5-point favorite at Carolina, which tells you how bad they are. Go lose this week. Go.
Yeah, they're way, way, way worse, especially to Bryce Young. If Dalton plays, it's a huge upgrade. By the way, the line is 7 now. But yeah, if Dalton plays, I mean, it probably does get underneath 6. But that shows you how bad Carolina is to be a touchdown dog at home to the Saints team who has lost 6 straight. Now, we are assuming Derek Carr is back, but you know.
Go lose this week and you'll feel rock bottom. I don't care about this game. About the result of the game, I mean, I do, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to go into the nuance of this game, what happened throughout. It just...
There really was no nuance. Like, it was pretty much like we kind of just didn't do anything every time we had the ball. I say that, we kind of talked about this earlier, some of the stuff ended up being okay. Like, we did run the ball pretty well. Chris Olave, you know, he had some drops, but got him involved. First 100-yard game for him. The defense was pretty good. Like, it's kind of weird because you say all that, and it's like, well, that couldn't have been too bad. But I do agree. It was visually, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. And I think a lot of those yards are just in between the 25s, like just a lot of moving in the middle of the field, but not really threatening at all. I think we only had one red zone trip, so that kind of proves that. Yeah, we gave up explosive plays. The defense was okay. Limited J.K. Dobbins. So that's nice that we're not the 32nd worst defense. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, visually it was one of the worst. It was just, I just couldn't wait for the game to be over. I couldn't wait for the game to be over because what I was watching was just, it was nothingness in a sea of nothing.
It doesn't matter because there are far and much greater, bigger issues right now that we have to discuss.
Let's do it. Me and you.
When is enough enough?
I would say enough is currently enough.
That's the question that we all need to consider now, and that everyone within the Saints organization has to consider. When is enough enough?
I would say right now.
Dennis Allen's calling card is defense, right?
Yeah.
Been a defensive coordinator his whole career, been a good one at that. I've said that. He's a very good defensive coordinator.
Yeah, sure.
Your run defense allowed 208 yards per game the last 3 weeks. Say that again slowly. Your run defense, which at one...
Yeah, I mean, this is old. This is all old news. We covered this. Yes, if Dennis Allen's calling card is defense, which it is, and the defense is 32nd, which it was, then yeah, you should be fired. That's it. You should not be the head coach anymore. And I believe that he will not be the head coach anymore come the end of the season, for sure. Talked about this before, where after Denver, he should have been fired. But if Mickey Loomis and the Saints want to have a philosophy of we're not going to fire coaches midseason, or they want to have the philosophy of, well, we'll give them the Chargers game and maybe, get some players back, see what happens. Carr comes back against Carolina, see what happens. All right, and if you do that, you probably do stick with him for the rest of the year and just, whatever, finish, 7 wins or whatever, miracle 8-win season, and, then fire him and start cleaning house. But it is, I will say this, it is a bigger problem than Dennis Allen, I would say. It's a much bigger problem than Dennis Allen. If you fire Dennis Allen, guess what? You're still going to be an average as hell team. You're still going to be below average most of the time, average some of the time. It's just the team has shown that if everything is perfect and everyone's healthy and they get up on an opponent early and they can run the football and they can do all this other stuff, they have shown okay, they're capable of things, but against good competition, against any kind of resistance at all, they completely fold. And firing Allen would do nothing for me. Would do nothing, because it's such a bigger project. It is such a bigger just overhaul, turnover, get rid of bad rosters, get rid of aging players, get rid of unimpactful players. So much has to happen for this team to be truly competitive again. Everyone kind of drawing the line in the sand that Dennis Allen is the problem. He sucks. Do not get that twisted. But if they fire Dennis Allen and we get dog walked against the Browns and dog walked against the Rams, and everyone's like, well, we fired Dennis Allen. Look, it's an average as hell team. Below average as hell team. Not a good team. It's not going to be a good team as long as the same not very good players keep suiting up for the not very good team. Dennis Allen is a clown, no doubt about it. Get him on his unicycle and get him up the road as soon as the season ends, for sure. But it's kind of the same thing with the Jets, where I think Robert Saleh was an absolute clown. I think he should have been fired. Should he have been fired mid-season? Probably not. But they fire him. Look what happens. Still a clown show. Why? Because they still have a roster full of clowns.
1 point set an NFL record for most consecutive games without allowing a 100-yard rusher. Under this defensive coordinator, by the way. Well, this head coach who was then your defensive coordinator. Last 3 weeks, you've allowed an average of 208 yards per game. The next worst is Seattle at 182. You're allowing 20 more rush yards per game than the next worst team over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert had a perfect passer rating on throws beyond 20 yards, which means you can't
plays, cover. Yeah, the explosive plays were absolutely the problem defensively. Because, like I said, run defense pretty good. We got after Herbert a lot, but those I mean, we don't have to get into an X's and O's situation, but I think Dennis Allen's calling card has previously been, I'm going to play man on the outside because I trust these cornerbacks, and in one-on-one situations, they're going to win. And cool. Well, we're seeing what happens when you don't have those guys. We're seeing what happens when you have guys who consistently get beat one-on-one. And I think a lot of these players are risky, high-risk, high-reward type players where they will put themselves in high-risk, high-reward leverage spots. And we have seen time and time again this year, they fail in those leverage spots, whether it's defensive holding, whether it's pass interference, whether it's getting absolutely mossed, whether it's falling down, whatever it is, in those high leverage spots that they're being put in, they're just falling apart. And the crazy part is, don't look at me like that, Matt. The crazy part is they were in pretty good position. Like, it's not one of those things where the defense was, like, against the Chiefs, we were getting eaten up because we were in this like soft zone type situation and they were just throwing it wide open in the middle of the field in that short intermediate. And you could tell that was a schematic breakdown. In this one, I thought Kool-Aid was in great position. I thought Alontae Taylor was in great position. I thought Ugo Amadi was in great position at the end. And in every single time, their great position did them absolutely nothing. To a certain point, you have to say, well, Dennis, I mean, I got to absolve you from this one, my man. I got to put this on Alontae Taylor. I got to put this on Kool-Aid McKinstry. So, again, bad players doing bad player things. It is what it is.
And the Chargers had allowed the third highest pressure percentage this season in the NFL. New Orleans pressured on just 20.
I do think sometimes you do have to. I know that the Chargers were dealing with offensive line injuries. You also have to look at who they're playing. Like those kind of stats in a very small sample size, which at this point is, you're talking about 7 games before this. So you do have to be careful when you do those kind of stats, because in a 7-game sample, depending on who you play, depending on the timing of injuries, they can like greatly sway. They can greatly sway those kind of stats. So you do have to kind of be careful with those. I'm not saying they're wrong, but you have to kind of put an asterisk by them this early in the season.
26% of dropbacks. So you can't pressure the quarterback, you can't defend and cover receivers, and you can't stop the run. You are not good at anything defensively.
No doubt.
You're not good at anything defensively.
Yeah. This is all coming like weeks too late, because this was actually one of their better defensive performances over the last 6 games. Like, this was a much better defensive performance than what we saw against Philadelphia, what we saw against Denver, what we saw against the Bucs. Like, if anything, the defense took a step forward, which is sad. But this conversation should have been had last week, which I'm sure it was, because we were all talking about how all of a sudden we're the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL, and we're on a historic record-setting pace for points allowed per game. Or yards allowed per game, excuse me.
So, I told you about the offense. I was going to give the offense a mulligan until they got healthy, because I fully understand there is no way any team in the NFL can lose 3 starting interior linemen, your starting quarterback,
2 wide
your do-it-all
receivers,
gadget player, Taysom Hill, your 2 top receivers. No team can.
100%.
There's no
100%.
team in the NFL that can lose all of that talent
100%.
and win and be competent, let alone win. So I was willing to say, okay, it was bad against Tampa. It was worse against Denver.
Yeah.
It's unrealistic to expect anything. My biggest takeaway from
100%.
those games where I was so disappointed in the defense, where you're allowing 200 rush yards per game, where you're just not even trying defensively. Your energy and your effort defensively is atrocious. That's what was so disappointing. So let me see what it looks like when it's a fair fight. Well, you get Lucas Patrick back, you get Cesar Ruiz back, you get Taysom Hill back, you get Chris Olave back, and how did you do?
Let's take a look. All right, right here we have the Broncos, Bucks, and Chargers games to look at the offenses that we're talking about. So against the Buccaneers, we averaged 4.6 yards per play. Remember, 5.1 yards per play is above league average. 4.6 yards per play, so that's below league average. We ran the ball for 3.9 yards per carry. We had a 4.9 yards per pass. We had 303 total yards of offense. We had the ball for 25 minutes. So that's kind of how we did against the Buccaneers. Against the Broncos, we were 4.1 yards per play, so we were worse. We had 271 yards, which was awful. We had 3.9 yards per patch, which is terrible. And we averaged 4.6 yards per rush. Had the ball for 26 minutes. So not good either. Like, all that is well below average / not good. 3.9 yards per pass is terrible. 4.9 yards per play is terrible. 4.6 yards per rush isn't bad, but it's not great. Against the Chargers, we had 366 yards of offense. Markedly better than both of those games. We had, let's see here. We had 6.4. Oh, excuse me. We had 366 yards of offense. We had 5.4 yards per play. 5.4 is pretty good. It's not pretty good. It's above average. 5.4 is definitely better than 4.6 that we had against the Bucs and 4.1 that we had against the Broncos. So 5.4, relatively decent. Yards per pass, 5.3, better than the Broncos game, but not good. Like, 5.3 yards per pass isn't going to cut it. Ran the ball for 117 yards, which is better than the 97 against the Broncos and the 81 against the Bucs. We also ran the ball for 5.6 yards per rush, which is pretty good. 5.6 yards per rush is a full yard better than we ran against the Broncos and well ahead of the 3.9 we ran against the Buccaneers. So, was it a shit performance? Was it miserable to watch? Did I want to vomit all over my chest? Yes, absolutely. But the players returning from injury did make a difference as far as like the efficiency level and what we were actually doing on offense. So just a little context for how the returns actually did look. And is the Chargers defense as good as Denver? No, but the Chargers defense is solid. So
you managed 2 field goals.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah, that part.
This
not
was
good.
a freshman
no
team going against going against a varsity. This was the varsity going against the freshman team.
This part is difficult to juggle. I understand where you're kind of talking out. I'm like, you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth. Because on one hand, this was the best offensive performance we have had in probably in the last 6 weeks. Like, if I had to guess, if the Chiefs, we averaged 4.3 yards per play. We had 220 yards of offense, so this was way better than the performance against the Chiefs. Against the Falcons, we had 366. Is that what we had? We had exactly the same amount of yards as we did against the Falcons. We had a better YPP. We had 5.2 against the Falcons. We had 5.4 in this game. We averaged 4 yards a rush against the Falcons. We averaged 5.6. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like, these kind of things are weird. Like, these kind of things are where it is hard sometimes, because if you were to ask me, honestly, this is, if we go back to even Philly, I mean, what I'm about to say is kind of controversial yet brave, but Philly, we have 219. I mean, this is a horrible performance. 219, 4 yards per play, 3.1 yards per rush. So, I mean, this is crazy. Okay, what I'm about to say, I'm going to blow a lot of y'all's minds, okay? Efficiency-wise, yards per play, all that stuff, like, this was probably the best offensive performance we have had since Dallas. And that is nuts. You could argue the Falcons game, because we did have some turnovers in there. Obviously, like, you do have to factor in red zone trips and all that kind of stuff. But then that also, some of that stuff is determined by turnovers and whatnot. So but we had 4 red zone attempts. I guess the Falcons, this is probably our best offensive performance, but it's close. Like, that's what's crazy about this, is that if you just look at this, the 5.4 yards per play, the 5.6 yards per rush, the fact that it was not happening in the red zone, the fact that it was happening exclusively in the middle of the field, definitely takes away from it. But it is kind of crazy when you think about just how bad we've been for the last 6 weeks, that this performance, which was an absolute F, is probably the best offensive performance we've had in, one of the best that we've had in the last 6 games, which is crazy.
You managed 2 friggin' field goals all day in an NFL game. You were 2 of 16 on third down. That's 13%.
Horrible.
Your average yards to go on third down, do you know this number? Hat tip Ross Jackson over at LouisianaSports.net had this in his numbers.
Let me guess. Average yards to go on third down. We had a lot of penalties on those third downs. I'm going to guess 8.4.
To go. It's a shout out. You should read it every week. The New Orleans Saints' average yards to go on third down was 9.4.
Damn close.
Average third and 9.4. Let me ask you a question. Do you think the New Orleans Saints...
You can't actually do that math. It checks out like real quick. It's really crude math. But if you do like 5 point something yards per play, give or take some, and then talk about then a penalty, like a 10-yard penalty, it all kind of does equate to like, yeah, okay, that does equal probably us being positive like 0.6-ish per every 3 downs. So that it does kind of check out.
Do you think this team, the team you saw on Sunday against the Chargers, do you think this team is Derek Carr away from being a contender?
Hell no. But they're also not subtract Dennis Allen away from being a contender. I'll tell you that. There's a lot of bigger problems there, Matthias.
You know the answer. Do you think this team is Derek Carr away from being a contender?
No. Who was thinking that? Yeah.
They're a
Who was
joke.
thinking that?
They're 2-6. Your roster is old and unimpressive.
There you go. Yes.
Derek Carr comes back. You're better.
You are better, but you're still, like I said, you're still whatever. It's still a bad roster. It's still bad players. Like, sweet. We went from below average. Well, not even below average. We went from one of the worst teams in the NFL to one of the most below average teams in the NFL. Cool.
Undeniably, you're better than you are with Rattler or Haener. Said that the day he got hurt. Sitting right in this chair. Had some moron on Twitter yesterday try to tell me, oh, Matt said Rattler's awesome. Never did. Actually went and clipped the show. Tweeted at him because he's an idiot. People hear what they want.
Hit him
what
with
I said was, there is no way in no reality where you are better this year with Rattler or Haener than you are with Derek Carr.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
But Carr has a low ceiling. I'm interested to see what Rattler may look like, and it ain't look good.
Did not look good in this game. Either. Absolutely not. Yeah, neither
not saying
one
they
of them
won't ever be good players, but they're not right now.
Yeah, true.
You come off a game like that in a stretch like this where you've lost 6 straight. First time that's happened in 19 years.
Yep.
20 seasons. I had to go back 2005. What's the reason? Well, Mickey Loomis told you the reason last week on his coach's show, or on the coach show. This is what Mickey Loomis said.
One of the things that good organizations do, man, you look beyond the results.
All right. I talked about this on an earlier video. I'm not a fan of when you take a fluid situation and you use a clip and turn it into a static thing. Like, obviously, to a certain extent, I agree with Mickey at the time where it's like you do have to kind of look past these results because we have so many injuries, we have so much stuff happening, whatever. Now that doesn't ring as true right now. Whenever it doesn't hold the same weight. We were saying the same thing last week. Like, okay, let's wait till we see what this team looks like when you get some guys back. And to a certain extent, the efficiency and the numbers and all this stuff has been boosted. The result hasn't changed at all. So, I don't know. I don't like, if Mickey comes out tomorrow and says, come on, guys, look past the results. It's like, my man, you've lost 6 games in a row. Like, we got players back. We're almost fully healthy. Like, the season's over. What do you mean look past the results? But, in like week 17, I don't think no one's going to be looking past the results. So, I take a little, I think that's kind of whatever. Everyone's using that as like a gotcha moment, but I don't think it really is very impactful at all.
Look beyond the results. That's what Mickey Loomis said. Good organizations look beyond the results. You don't look at the fact that you've lost 6 straight. You don't look at the fact that over the last 3 weeks, you've allowed an average of 208 rush yards per game. You don't look, you look beyond the results. You don't look at the fact that the last 3 weeks, you've scored 27, 10, and 8 points. You don't look at that. You look beyond the results. That's what good organizations do. They don't look at the results. They look beyond the results. Okay, Mickey, let's look beyond the results. What's the reason? What's the reason you're 2-6?
I would say the reason is a combination of horrible injury luck and aging, unimpactful performance from the core players.
What's the reason your defense stinks? Your offense goes on the road against the Chargers and puts up 2 field goals. What's the reason? Oh, I know. Your head coach is 26-51 all time. What's the reason you're 2-6? Your stars are old.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Carr's 33. Cam Jordan's 35. DeMario Davis is 35.
Being old, see, I don't think being old is the problem. The problem is that they're unimpactful, right? Like, again, Derek Henry's 30 years old. Derek Henry is currently on pace to be the MVP. No one is saying he's old. Why? Because he's impactful. He's having a good year. It's not that he's old. It's not that these players are older. It's that they're not doing anything. It's that their performance has absolutely crumbled. Now, has it crumbled because they're old? I can't, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But it's not good. They're not good. That is like Aaron Rodgers. Like it's not that Aaron Rodgers is old, right? It's that his performance is lacking. Now, again, is it because he's old? I don't know. But I think it's much easier to just say they're ass.
Tyrann Mathieu, 32. What's the reason? Look beyond the results. What's the reason? How about this? You're $72 million over the cap for 2025.
That has nothing to do with us being 2-6. Obviously, that, like us being 2-6 is more about the actual roster building.
The next closest to you is Cleveland at $39.5 million. Let me say that another way. Next year, at $72 million over the cap, the next closest team to you is $33 million better than you. What's the reason, Mick? Let's look at the draft. Isaiah Foskey, Kendre Miller, Nick Saldiveri, Trevor Penning, Peyton Turner.
Now we're deep into the video, but now we're finally getting to the actual reason. The actual reason is that for a long time, we were still operating as if we had Sean Payton and we could just develop whoever we wanted. And so we were taking project players, developmental players, which why all offseason during the draft time, we were saying we have to draft impactful players because at this point you don't have good enough players. You don't have the proven capability to develop these players. So you have to draft good players, which is why we said draft best available. Just draft good, best available, high impact level players. Like get them under contract. You get enough of them under rookie deals and all of a sudden you have a pretty good cheap team, right? That's how it works. But when you're drafting players that are all developmental players and none of them pan out, you end up with just nothing. And you end up being forced to extend or sign aging players because your young players haven't developed. So, yes, that was a horrible thing the Saints were doing for a couple of years there at the end of Sean Payton and currently, or until this draft. This last draft, we saw a bit of a shift. We saw the Kool-Aid McKinstry. We saw Talise Fuaga, like players that were come in, play immediately. Like, good. You do that a couple more times, okay. You do that a couple more times, you've got now a bunch of players who can play. But, that part has been an epidemic with our drafting philosophy.
You keep whiffing in the draft.
Yeah.
You have these assets that you hope make you younger and more talented, and you can't evaluate. And so
yeah, huge problem. And who is doing the main evaluation? Who is doing the main, I know people talked about, like Nick Underhill's talked about this before, where for a while there, the Saints were really going after one specific type of defensive end. And that one specific type just didn't work. So then all of a sudden it's like, okay, It's less about that individual player and more about what you are valuing, what you're actually looking for. Are you looking for the wrong things? Obviously you are. So who is doing that? I guarantee you Mickey Loomis is not going over 400 hours of draft tape for every single player. Like, there is a team. Who is the voice in the room? Who is making the decision? I know Mickey's making the ultimate decision, but who is, like, how involved is Dennis Allen? Who is the head scout? What conversations are they having there? It is, which goes to my point. My point is that it's much more than a Mickey Loomis problem or a Dennis Allen problem or even a Derek Carr problem or a Cam Jordan problem. It is a top to bottom problem of, we're not good right now, fundamentally, operationally, really anywhere. We're not great across the board. Mickey was saved by a draft class before. He needs to be saved by a draft class again. He was saved by the Alvin Kamara, Marshawn Lattimore, like all those draft picks right there. Boom, 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 boom. Extended the window, gave us a great, back half of Drew Brees' career, whatnot. But right now, there needs to be some serious systematic changes in this franchise, and it's going to take a little bit. Like, it's going to take a little bit there, for I think these changes to make and for us to look better. And it's not, because people keep saying, like, trade away Alvin Kamara, trade away Marshawn Lattimore, trade away whoever for draft capital. That doesn't matter if the people drafting are drafting Isaiah Foskey and Peyton Turner. You can have 10 picks in the first round, but if they end up being a handful of Isaiah Foskeys, who cares, right? Like, you gotta have the ability to evaluate and draft before you worry about stockpiling picks. You could have had 4 out of the top 5 picks in the draft a couple years ago and walked out of there with Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and a bunch of other players that can't play. It happens every year. Okay, so before, we're kind of all over the place in what we want this quote-unquote rebuild to look like. Because, again, firing Dennis Allen, is it going to fix anything? No. It'll make fans feel good. Getting rid of Derek Carr, is it going to fix anything? It may fix the books, for us, it may fix some contract situation, but until we find the capability to fill roster spots and get impactful players in here and draft and scout and have some kind of a culture, and it is a much bigger rebuild than 1 or 2 or 3 people or coaches.
So you missed on all these draft picks. What's the reason, Mick? How about we look at your free agents? This year, coming into the season, you needed offensive line and you needed wide receiver help. You go and sign Chase Young and Willie Gay. Bang up job, Mick.
No, I mean, to be fair, we did need help on the edge, and we did need linebacker help, and so I mean,
what's the reason? Look beyond the results. Play that.
I mean, you actually kind of don't need wide receiver help if you're going into the season. If you're thinking we're going to run mostly heavy package, mostly 2 tight end, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back type sets. We have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. At that point, you're thinking we drafted Bum Means, whatever, we go sign somebody else. They brought in a couple guys, none who worked out. But I can understand where they're thinking I would much rather sign Chase Young than whatever receiver to be our 3rd receiver, 4th receiver, that when we don't use 3 wide receiver, 4 wide receiver packages. Now, obviously, you can't see Rashid Shaheed or Chris Olave getting hurt / both getting hurt, but Chase Young was absolutely a position of need.
And again, look beyond. What do good organizations do?
One of the things that good organizations do, man, you look beyond the results.
Yeah, you look beyond the results. That's what you do. Good organizations look beyond the results. You wonder, why do you have a head coach that's 26-51? Why are your stars 33, 35, 35, 32? Why are you $72 million over the cap next year, which gives you no hope of fixing it in free agency? Why do you keep whiffing on draft picks like Foskey, Miller, Saldiveri, Penning, Turner? Why do you go out and sign free agents like Chase Young and Willie Gay when you need help at wide receiver in the offensive line? Why? You're the reason why. You're the one. You hired Dennis Allen.
Screaming at me, Matt.
All these
Jesus.
bums.
Man, I
You're the
thought we were
one who
friends.
keeps pissing away Gail Benson's money in the salary cap. So you're $72 million over the cap. You're the one with this
Matt, my
stupid
guy,
protocol
Jesus.
where you keep going
Relax.
and restructuring deals and kick the
Take it
can down the
easy.
road, and it
Take it
perpetually
easy,
puts
Matt.
you in this awful state.
Take it easy. Take it easy. Listen. Guys, let's back up the truck a little bit here. Okay? Let's back up. Let's all just take a breath. Let's all just take a nice breath, have a glass of water. Goodness, man, you're getting red. Come on. Get you a sip of that Evermore water there, or maybe even a sip of that Bud Light, brother. Guys, things are bad. No doubt about it. Things are ugly, but it is crazy to think about that we are what? 2.5 seasons not even into this Dennis Allen thing? I mean, it's crazy to hear. It really is. It's crazy to hear. It feels like it's been 20 years, right? Because I think where the Saints, what the real problem is, or one of the big problems with the Saints, is that when Breeze walked out that door and we were saddled with a soulless team with no replacement for our leader, no replacement for the culture, no replacement for what made the Saints, right? No replacement for that. Then Payton leaves. Now the architect for that has fallen apart. I think the failure was believing that we could insulate and protect what they had with people from the organization, whether it was Pete Carmichael or Dennis Allen or even some of the roster. Looking around, and if I'm going to use it'd be like the Patriots, right? It'd be like the Patriots being like, whatever. Tom Brady's gone, doesn't matter. Wes Welker can pick up he can pick it up. Or whatever. Julian Edelman can lead the charge. Or Gronk can lead the charge. These guys can pick it up. But then it's like, something's missing. Something's broken here. And that's where the Saints are. The Saints have been broken since Breeze left, and certainly since Payton left. And it feels like this really long time. It feels like a really long time because even at the end of Breeze, when he was all banged up and he was in and out and he was playing at maybe 50%. So it seems longer than I think it is, which makes it even more, or makes it to where we're closer to this kind of rebuild. Like, you think about how long that feels and how long that's been. Then you look around and you're looking at these cast of characters. You're like, damn, a lot of these cast of characters were there then. Like Cam Jordan and Kamara and Lattimore and a lot of these linemen, a lot of the, like DeMario. And, it's just, I think it's a soulless organization, an organization that's just kind of going nowhere fast, that's trying to hold on to this idea or trying to hold on to this thing that just isn't there anymore. And it's just going through their fingers. It's just going through, like, it's just, it's obvious that it's just kind of a rudderless ship. And is it all on Mickey Loomis? Absolutely not. Is it all on Dennis Allen? Absolutely not. Are they two parts of the problem? Yeah, sure. For sure. Is it all on Cam Jordan? Is it all on Demario Davis? Is it all on the defensive line? Is it all on Trevor Penning? Is it all on Kendra Miller? Is it all on these guys? No, it's not all on them, but they are absolutely part of that problem. They are absolutely part of the issue. They're absolutely part of just this, like, really mediocre, this really bad, kind of bad built franchise. And, no doubt about it, it is a business oriented, what have you done for me now lately kind of league. No doubt about it, there will be major turnover. The coaching ranks and the roster, on the defense, on the offense. There'll be major changes across the board. What this team looks like next year, whether Mickey Loomis is here, whether Dennis Allen is here, whether Derek Carr is here, I don't know. But it's got to change fast. And it's got to change in every single facet. It's got to change the culture of the players. It's got to change how the players, the impact of the players, how they perform on the field. It's got to change philosophically. It's got to change strategically and schematically. It's got to change what we do during the game. The 4th and 1 punts from the 50, all that stuff has got to be different. It's got to change from the scouting. It's got to change from the drafting. It's got to change from the salary caps. The contracts have to change. All that has to change. All of that. And the craziest part of that is that you can't change all that in 1 week. You can't change all that in one offseason. You can't change all that in one draft. And the bad news is we still have 11 weeks of this season. Like, we're not even at the end of the season. Like, we're not even at the point to where, okay, we can start putting this kind of stuff into motion. We still have to slog through 11 weeks of this.
We got no money to spend in free agency. You're the one who puts together a staff to go evaluate in the draft, and you keep coming up with Isaiah Foskey in the second-round pick because you like his relative athletic score.
Yeah, see, like, if that's something that we're valuing highly, then that's something where the whoever's putting the evaluation together, it's like, all right, we need to decrease the weight of that. We need to decrease the weight of that on the importance level. You know? So, a good example of where we just kind of, the scales are tipped the wrong way with whoever is doing the judging, the grading, and selecting.
I'm sick of it. When is enough enough? You want me to say it again? It's the first thing I said. It's the first note I got. When is enough enough?
Yeah, I think enough is certainly enough now, I think, to where it is time. Like, now that the season is officially sunk, I would say that, yeah, I think now, I don't think there's any doubt. There's no doubt in my mind of what's about to happen. There's no doubt in my mind of where we are headed as a franchise. So, to answer that question, I would say enough is currently enough.
Been 3 years now, man. 3 years. 3 years of this crap. You're trying to sit here and convince me because you win games at the end of the season. Oh, we're close to turning the corner. Been over this.
This is different, though, because when you're 9-8 and you tie for the division and you are a game away, when you are a quarter away, when you are whatever away, there is some credence to, like, hey, look, we're right there. Like, we're a bounce away, we're an injury away. We're 9-8. We are first place in the division. We have lost on a tiebreaker. Like, we're right there. Okay, I can hear that. When you're 4-13, or when you're a 6-win team or a 7-win team, and you had to win 3 games at the end of the year against the Raiders and the Giants and whoever else just to try and scrape by a 7-win season. Like, you can't say those same things, which is why I don't like using fluid, words or quotes, whatever, as static quotes. Like, obviously, it's very different saying, look, we're right there when you're 9-8 versus when you're 5-12.
Won 4 of 5, won 3 of 4. 7 of those wins that you got. 7. 6 of the 7 are against teams with a losing record. The only team with a winning record that you beat in those runs the last 2 years was the Eagles, and that's when they didn't have Jalen Hurts. You beat Gardner Minshew.
The boy.
You're the problem.
Me?
And maybe I'd go a step further and say Gail Benson's the problem.
Wow.
Because if
what kind of draft evaluation do you think she's doing?
she continues to allow this, then she is just as negligent as you are for allowing this crap to continue. How many times can you look at this? How long we got to look at this?
I have a feeling about 10 more weeks.
Not even competitive.
No, not at all.
Losing's one thing. Not being competitive on either side of the ball?
Just getting smoked.
And then when you look to the future, you realize, man, why do I have any confidence in this front office's ability to draft? They keep missing. Oh, let's go to dress it in free agency. Oh, okay, we're $72 million over the cap. Why? Because of you. Sit here and tell me what good organizations do, like you know what a good organization is.
Well, in the last 25 years, we are one of the most winning organizations, certainly more than the Dallas Cowboys. But it's going to take a big time. It's going to take either a miracle where you bring in a player and you land a player like a Lamar Jackson, like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Joe Burrow, whoever can come in and immediately change. It's going to take a coach like Jim Harbaugh, like John Harbaugh, like Sean McVay, like Kyle Shanahan, who can come in, completely change the culture, have a totally new philosophy. It's going to take something like that. It's going to, but it can happen. But there's a lot of pieces you have to move in order for it to happen. You've got to hit on, look at the Lions. The Lions have been toiling in futility for 40 years, maybe even longer. They find the culture guy, Dan Campbell. They find the wizard offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson. They nail impactful players, young impactful players. Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the list goes on and on. They do all that, and they get the free agent, or they trade for the player who no one else wants, that lines up perfectly with what they're trying to do in the system, and next thing you know, it's off to the races. So they hit, 4 for 4, 5 for 5, whatever. They did what they had to do to get the number one receiver, the number one running back, the free agent running back that's fantastic. They shored up the offensive line, defensive line. They did not miss on a draft pick for like 8 or 9 draft picks in a row. Did all that, So that's what good organizations do. Like I said, you look around the Saints, we're not an Amon-Ra St. Brown away. We're not a Jared Goff away. We're not a Ben Johnson away. We're not a Dan Campbell away. We're not a Jahmyr Gibbs away. We are a lot of different things away. And it's got to turn over the entire franchise. It's got to be a complete overhaul of how this team operates. That's what it has to be. And it starts, I think it starts now.
The worst organization in the NFL right now. It's a mouthful, man. You're right up there with the friggin' Raiders. I can handle losing if you tell me there's a path to winning, if you got to go through it to get somewhere. But your approach has been, hey, we're close. And you're friggin' blind. Everybody can see it except the people making the decisions.
I think you're close until you're not, right? I think that's what the Saints and Mickey was operating on, is that we're close with these guys. We're close because we believe in Marshawn Lattimore. We believe in Demario Davis. We believe in Cam Jordan. We believe in Michael Thomas. We believe in all these players. And then eventually you're not close because those players aren't the same. And all of a sudden you look around and you're like, man, we're not close at all, right? And I think that's where we're at. Like, it's just happened really fast where all those players have fallen off so dramatically over the last year, 2 years, that we were on the doorstep. And then, the guys who you're hoping to be your impact guy, the guys who you're hoping to be the run stopper or the shutdown corner or the wide receiver or the left guard or whatever, they just don't have it anymore.
And if Gail Benson isn't going to step up and fire Mickey Loomis's ass, then she got to go too. The hell of it is, it's her team.
Oh, not
no
the ball
succession plan in place, no reason for optimism whatsoever. I've reached my breaking point with this team. And it ain't because they lost to the Chargers. I didn't think they were going to beat the Chargers. But when you go out and you're routinely not competitive, and the people in charge continue to act aloof as if they don't care, when you and I care more than they seemingly do, and I'm not talking about the players. I believe Cam Jordan cares. I believe Demario Davis cares. Tyrann Mathieu cares. I believe that. They're the ones.
Yeah, that's the bad part, is that, like, it's always a different boogeyman, right? Like, the boogeyman for a while there was the effort, right? The boogeyman was effort, whatever. Then the boogeyman is this, the boogeyman is that. It's just, I've always said, I think they are giving effort. I think they haven't quit. Demario Davis and Cam Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu are not going to quit on this team, on this franchise, on their legacy, on the fans. But right now, it's just kind of fruitless. Like, they just don't have whatever, the combination of players on the roster just aren't good enough.
It's busting their ass, getting their heads kicked in every week. But organizationally, you ain't no better. You're even close to getting better. And the people that make the decisions aren't interested in getting better. They're interested in being right.
I think Kubiak was a good hire. I like Kubiak and Janoko. I think that was a good hire from Mickey to go outside of the organization. This could have been a whole lot worse as far as like who he hired there. We'll see if what they can put together. Again, you look at the box score, what they did against. I didn't like a lot of the play calling at times and whatnot. Who's actually making the decisions on like fourth downs and things, like we don't know. But I do think Kubiak and Janoko and the staff was good. The next step is who's going to be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Like, that's Mickey's next big job. Next big job is who's the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints? What's that culture look like? And then what can you do? Kind of a two-part. What can you do peeling off some bad contracts while replacing with young or impactful players?
It's a terrible place to be as a leader. Acknowledge when you made a mistake and fix it. Won't do it. So instead, Hey, bro, give me the shovel. Let me keep digging deeper. Ain't my money. Oh, we're close. What do good organizations do? What do good organizations do, man?
One of the things that good organizations do,
Not the
man, you
sound
look
drop.
beyond the result.
Yeah, you wouldn't know because you're not a good organization. You're not a good GM. You're a laughing stock, and you're the worst general manager in the league right now, which is why you're on par in a nosedive right now with Carolina. Come on, Gail Benson. It's your turn to step up. I like when an owner hires good people and gives them the space and the resources they need to do their job. But at some point, when the results are, and yes, when the results are what they are.
Gail's not firing Mickey. Mickey will have to resign, if anything.
You have
Which I
got
think
to
is possible.
step in and say, this is unacceptable, and you make a change. That's the reality of everybody in management, every leader, anywhere. You've got to be willing to acknowledge when something isn't going right, and you've got to fix it. Now it's on Gail Benson because it's clear Mickey Loomis ain't going to do it. Hey,
I had heard that Mickey a couple of years ago had or maybe it was last year, had 2 years left in him. Maybe this is something that expedites him retiring, going into more of a council role or something. But the thing is, he's going to always be part of this team. Right? He's in the will. We all know that. So, I don't think we're going to get any Mickey Loomis news. We're waiting on when does Dennis Allen get fired and when can we turn the page and move forward. And that part does feel bad, waiting for that to happen for the next 10 weeks or whatever. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's where we're at. And, I don't blame Matt for being upset. I don't blame any fans for being upset and being sick of this. I'm just as sick of it as all of you are, covering this team every day, watching this team, whatnot. But that's the path that I see. That's the linear path I see is get Allen out of here, bring in the new guy. You try and replicate what the Lions did. You hit on draft picks. You hit on impact players. Clear the books. Get a culture. We don't have a culture. We haven't had a culture since Breeze. So there you go. I mean, a lot to go through this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Get on down in the comments below. This one, highly volatile, highly emotional. So I can't wait to see what all of you have to say in the comments. Get on down there. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.